In business, there's a saying, what you don't know can hurt you. And that is absolutely true when we're talking about the hidden costs baked into every single product you make.
Yeah, see, in manufacturing, you've got your obvious costs, right? The raw materials, the labor, but then there are the invisible ones, and those are the ones that can quietly sink the ship. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on these hidden costs. We'll show you how getting a handle on them isn't just about good accounting, it's about creating a serious competitive edge.
So here's what we've got on tap. We're going to start by figuring out what these hidden factory costs actually are. Then, we'll explore a few different ways to tackle them, starting with a super simple one-size-fits-all method, and then we'll ramp it up to something way more precise. And of course, we'll wrap things up by talking about how you can choose the right approach for your business, and we'll even take a quick peek at what's next in the world of cost allocation. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, let's kick things off. What are these hidden costs we keep talking about? Well, to put it simply, they're all the expenses that are absolutely essential to keep your factory humming. Keeping the lights on, the machines running, but you can't just point to a finished product and say, there's the electricity cost right there.
And asking this question is so important. Why? Because the costs you don't see, or even worse, the ones you get wrong, they can be silent profit killers. This is exactly how a company ends up thinking a certain product is a total rock star, a bestseller, when in reality, it's secretly losing money on every single unit that goes out the door.
Now, let's be super clear. We are not talking about direct costs, like the steel that goes into a car door or the wages for the person on the assembly line. That's easy stuff. Manufacturing overhead is, well, it's everything else. Think about it. The rent for the factory, the supervisor's salary, the utilities, even the oil that keeps the machines from grinding to a halt. All of it is absolutely necessary, but you can't really see it in the final product.
And wow, the list just goes on and on. You've got insurance, property taxes, maintenance crews, quality control staff. I mean, it's a huge bucket of costs. And here's the tricky part. You have to take that giant bucket of money and somehow, fairly and systematically, sprinkle it across all the different products you're making. Because until you do that, you have no idea what it truly costs to make anything.
And this is why getting it right is a total game changer. I mean, if you know your true costs, you can price your products smartly to actually make a profit. You can figure out which products are your real winners, your cash cows, and which ones are just dragging you down. And this isn't just about pricing, it's about the big picture. It informs your financial statements and helps you make those massive strategic decisions like, should we double down on this product line or just cut our losses?
All right, so let's get into the how. How do we actually do this allocation? We're going to start with the first and simplest method. I like to call this the sledgehammer approach to cost allocation. It's not subtle, but it's simple, and it gets the job done in one big swing. The whole idea behind this one is to paint with a really broad brush. You basically take all of your factory's overhead costs, everything we just talked about, and you dump them into one giant pot. Then, you just spread that total cost out over all your products using one single, simple metric, like maybe direct labor hours or machine hours. In the process, it's about as straightforward as it gets. Step 1, figure out your total estimated overhead for, say, the next year. Step 2, divide that number by your one metric. Let's stick with total machine hours. Boom! That gives you a single overhead rate. From that point on, you just multiply that rate by the number of machine hours each product uses.
Okay, let's put some numbers to this to make it real. Let's say your total factory overhead is $200,000, and you figure all your machines are going to run for a total of 10,000 hours. You just do the math. $200,000 divided by 10,000 hours gives you a rate of $20 per machine hour. Super simple. So now, if you make a product that takes 5 hours on the machines, you tack on $100 of overhead. If another product only needs 1 hour, it just gets $20. You can totally see why this is so appealing, right? It's quick, it's easy, and hey, if all your products are pretty much the same, it works pretty well.
But, and this is a big but, here's the trade-off. What you gain in simplicity, you lose in precision. And if your factory makes a bunch of different things, some are simple and quick, others are complex and take forever, this method can be downright misleading. It can make your simple products look way more expensive than they really are, while making your complex products look like a bargain. And that can lead you to make some really bad decisions about pricing and strategy.
Okay, so if the sledgehammer is too clumsy, we need a better tool. To get more accurate, we have to get more detailed, more granular. And that brings us to our next method, departmental rates. If the last one was a sledgehammer, think of this one as a set of scalpels. It's much more precise and targeted.
With this approach, we stop looking at the factory as just one big cost blob. Instead, we break it down.
We acknowledge that, hey, the machining department, which is full of expensive, power-hungry equipment, has a totally different cost structure than the assembly department, which is all about skilled people putting things together by hand. So each department gets its very own, much more relevant overhead rate.
Let's see how this plays out. Imagine a product's journey. First, it goes through the machining department. Since that place is all about machines, we'll apply a rate of, say, $30 per machine hour. Then, it moves over to assembly. That department is all about people, so its rate is based on labor, maybe $40 per labor hour. So the total overhead for that product is a combination of the two. You can see how this gives you a much more accurate picture of the resources that specific product actually used.
So what's the verdict? Well, this method is a huge leap forward in accuracy, no doubt. It's especially good if you have different kinds of work happening in different parts of your plant. But that extra accuracy comes with extra homework. You actually have to track all the costs and all the activity, like machine hours or labor hours, for each individual department. That's more data to collect, which means a bit more administrative work. But what if even scalpels aren't precise enough? What if we could get even more focused? Well, that's where our third method comes in. This one shifts our thinking away from just departments and down to the specific actions happening inside them. If the last one was a scalpel, think of this one as a laser beam.
And this right here is the big aha moment. This is the core idea behind what's called activity-based costing, or ABC for short. It fundamentally changes the question we're asking. Instead of where are the costs happening, it asks what activities are actually driving these costs. See, ABC gets down to the nitty-gritty. It identifies the true cost drivers. We're not just looking at machine hours or labor hours anymore. We're looking at things like how many times do we have to set up a machine for a new production run? How many quality inspections does this product need? How many purchase orders did we have to process for its components? It gives you this incredibly powerful, super detailed view of what's really going on.
Now, I'm not going to lie, it's a more involved process, no question. You have to identify all these key activities, like machine setup or material handling. Then you have to create cost pools for each one. Basically, add up all the money related to that activity. And from there, you calculate a rate, like it costs us $500 every time we do a machine setup. Yeah, it's more work, but the payoff is huge because it forges this direct link between your costs and the actions that cause them. The clarity you get is just incredible.
So, the big takeaway with ABC is this. It gives you accuracy that is just unmatched. It really is the gold standard, especially if you're in a complex manufacturing environment with lots of different products and processes. Now, what's the catch? Well, you guessed it. Setting it up and keeping it running requires a serious commitment of time and a whole lot of data. It's not for the faint of heart. Okay, so we've looked at the sledgehammer, the scalpel, and the laser beam. We have these different tools in our toolbox. The million-dollar question now is, how do you pick the right one for your business, and how do you actually put it into practice?
Well, first things first, the measure you choose to spread your costs with, that's called the allocation base, is absolutely critical. It has to have a real cause and effect relationship with the cost. Let me give you an example. If your factory is almost completely automated, using direct labor hours as your base is just nonsense. The people aren't driving the costs, the machines are. You have to make sure your yardstick actually measures what matters in your operation.
And look, putting any of these systems in place takes discipline. It's not a weekend project. You start with a really careful setup, making sure you classify all your costs and choose your drivers wisely. Then, it's all about being consistent and documenting everything. And please remember, this is not a set it and forget it kind of deal. Your business changes, right? So you have to circle back regularly and review the system to make sure it's still giving you an accurate picture.
All right, let's wrap this up by looking to the horizon. Where is all this heading? Because, just like every other part of business, technology is starting to completely change the game here.
And honestly, the stuff that's coming down the pipe is pretty exciting. We're talking about systems that use AI to automatically figure out the best cost drivers for you. Imagine getting real-time overhead adjustments fed directly from your factory's ERP system, or using predictive analytics to forecast your overhead costs. We're even moving towards a future where we can seamlessly track and allocate things like sustainability costs, giving us a truly holistic view of a product's real cost and impact. And really, that brings us to the ultimate point of all this. A good, effective cost allocation system is like a perfectly clear lens. It gives you the sharp focus you need to make smart, profitable decisions. But a bad system, or an outdated one, that's like trying to navigate through a thick fog. You think you know where you're going, but you're really just hiding the truth from yourself and flying blind. So I'll leave you with this question to think about.
Right now, is your cost system a lens or is it fog?